Thank you very much.
Well, let's speak to the political advisor, Pablo O'Hannah, now, because, Pablo, I know you've worked in the United States, you worked for the Kamala Harris presidential campaign. Donald Trump has not been a stranger to suing media organisations and not been a stranger to, quite successfully, squeezing quite a bit of money out of them.
Yeah, and I can say from experience that you do not want to live in a world where we don't have something like the BBC. I think we're in a really dangerous place when anti-BBC figures like Boris Johnson and Donald Trump can repeatedly lie about anything from lockdown parties to election results. And no one even looks up, but a single acknowledged and apologised for mistake has become proof that nothing is trustworthy. The BBC has apologised, leaders have taken responsibility, and standards, I'm sure, and should be tightened. But Britain needs a strong, independent BBC at home. And as a world-class soft power, we forget this, but it really is an asset to the UK on the world stage. And I think in a world where journalism is actually increasingly, blocked, in it's 75% of the world actually doesn't have free journalism, the BBC has never been more important. We should fix what went wrong, absolutely, and defend the rest of it.
But the thing is though, it's not that people don't want the BBC. In fact, I want a BBC. The problem I'm having here is that the BBC has gone out there and made those mistakes itself and tried to twist a narrative. And how much more, how many other things have they done that to? It's not just that one thing alone, is it, though? It's also the coverage of Israel and Gaza. It's also that documentary featuring the son of a Hamas operative. They never mentioned it. It's also their coverage on transgenderism, the disciplining of Martine Croxall for simply pointing out a reality and a fact. It's the behaviours, and then listening to Tim Davie saying it's our enemies. And it's not our enemies. We want exactly what you're talking about. But we can't have that if they behave like this. They need to be held to account, surely.
Absolutely, and you should put your hands up when you get it wrong. And I do think that the BBC does that. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find another news organisation, any actually news organisation in the world, which would send push notifications to tens of millions of phones about itself, apologising, correcting. You can't find another organisation because actually no broadcaster, no paper does that. Only the BBC. Yes, clunky, late, frustrating, but you know what? None of us are perfect. We've all made a mistake or two, I'm sure, sometimes live on TV. But the BBC remains trusted because they do hold their hands up, as they say, sometimes late, sometimes clunky, and we want them to get there a little bit faster. But I don't think you'll find any other news organisation that corrects itself and apologises in the way
That's because they're not accountable to Ofcom. They've got their own complaints department, and then eventually it's only if everyone complains and something. But we're accountable, so we have to. We don't have a choice. Sorry, Tom.
Sorry, I was going to say. I mean, I think the BBC is held to account. I think that we are seeing it now that they're being held accountable. That is the right thing to do. And I do think we have to look at why the commercial rivals and opponents want to bring the BBC down.
No, they don't.
Despite their best efforts, the BBC remains the most used, most trusted news source in the world, and a globally recognised brand. As I say, they have a 24/7 worldwide operation that our papers simply can't match. And if they attack it for being, too dominant, then they admit that it's invaluable. So instead they're crying bias and lies. And listen, the BBC is not perfect. We can all admit that. But the answer here should be to build up and hold accountable.
Of course,
BBC,
commercial news organisations can't compete with a tax-funded organisation. I mean, you're comparing apples and oranges. I mean, this is an organisation that owns the primary spots in broadcast, has existed since broadcast began, and offers its journalism without advertising for free because it is funded by a poll tax.
Which is exactly why it's so important. The BBC continues to provide more information, more news, but not just that. Remember that the BBC
is more than
just a news channel. It delivers award-winning drama, comedy, children's shows, documentaries.
So does Netflix. But I mean, here's the problem, right?
But not on the same scale.
What we have seen over the course of the last decade or so is a massive shift in how people consume media. I mean, the BBC used to be a broadcast organisation. It is now, in effect, a newspaper. When it was founded, it would have been absolutely bonkers to imagine the state would go about printing newspapers and handing them out for free. And yet that's what the BBC website now does. And it does that in local forms as well. What have we seen commensurately over the same period of time? Local newspapers closing down in city after city, in town after town, in county after county. Particularly, perhaps, because they've been pushed out by a state-funded product. This has in some ways hurt local journalism.
No, actually, on the contrary, the local democracy reporters that the BBC pays for, which go to local papers like the Manchester Evening News and the Liverpool Echo, they get good, funded local democracy reporters who go in and they do the really boring
Pablo,
stuff like
they've
this. They do
hollowed
council
out
meetings and they
local
are able to
journalism,
hold
local papers, local
government to
democracy,
account.
and now they offer a couple of journalisms to the few local papers that are left standing.
Pablo, they've actually got rid of local radio, which is the bastion, which is one of the best things that they had, which was the community-based stuff.
They've not got rid of local radio.
And I've just got to say that it's not about competitors wanting to bring them down. I said to you at the beginning, I don't want to bring them down, but they don't need my help, though, on that one, do they? They're doing a good job on their own. Pablo, I've got to leave it there. Really good to talk to you. Thank you very much.
It's time for the Great British Giveaway now. If you're starting to feel festive, how about Christmas on us this year? Here's how to win.
You could win your entire